Zuvuya is a force that propels synchronicity and consequently the supply from which magic bursts forth. It is a reflex of cosmic memory, the circuit through which everything comes back to itself. Through synchronicity, symbols, and metaphors, we are rearranging and forming our inner landscape to be able to grow in the fullness of being our own selves. Welcome to our podcast. In this sacred space, we share valuable knowledge, experiences, and art for the benefit of all. This episode is especially dedicated to my cousin Andrea again and her family. As synchronicity would have it, while Kat and I were recording this episode, Andrea was going through her transition phase, and sadly, she passed away on July the 15th, 2022. So I dedicate this episode to her and her family because I understand the grief they're going through. And may we always remember that love is everything. Love transcends time and space, and our beloved ones, they remain in our hearts. And we can honor their lives by living a very fruitful life with them in our hearts. I love you, Andrea. Thank you for being my cousin. Coming up.
But this is exactly where I needed to be. Had I not created that whole environment, I would have stayed in my judgmental, anti-capitalist, or whatever bull beep I was telling myself, so that I wouldn't deal with what's actually happening. My mom, I failed at healing my mom. My mamita is now gone. My kid is not gonna have a gram. Now the actual real issues flood up. The exhibition feels completely different, which is what made it a success. If the exhibition actually had become a, yeah, can you believe her? Who buys so many things? What kind of exhibition is that? That's disgusting. That's like, you know. Yeah. So this is the way it needed to be. And when the exhibition ends, my idea was that everyone who came to the exhibition could take one or two objects from the show, so that instead of paying rental for a storage unit that we all, she's going to be everywhere, kind of like the ashes. So her clothes are going to be everywhere. Everybody who came to the show, now my mom is going to be in everybody's closet and everybody's everything. And it was very interesting because people who were very close to me, people who I loved, my friends, and I would ask him, like, who better than you to take something from my mom? Pick anything. The closer people were to me, the more they were like, this pen, I want to take this pen. And I would be like, you don't want like jewelry or clothes? And they were very careful and like, no, I want to take something safe. While strangers, one of them comes to me and says, I'm going to take this. And I look at it, it's the only letter that was left behind that my grandma had written to my mom with a picture and everything. And I'm looking at it and I look at him and I'm thinking, and I tell him, oh, this is great. I'm not sure if this one is available for you to take. What have I done? Do you want to pick anything else? And he looks at me and he says, isn't this the point of the piece? I'm like, I guess you're absolutely right. Go ahead. And he took
something very valuable in emotion. Yeah.
But he was absolutely right. I mean, sure, I could have that letter and show it to you right now, but that made it more, I don't know, it was very, very interesting and very, very challenging. And art always finds a way to bite me in the ass.
Hello, Synchronauts, and welcome to another episode of Zuvuya Sessions. My name is Aida. I am very, very happy to have you here with us today in a very, very special episode with my dear friend and artist, Catalina Jaramillo, also known as the Catalina or the Cat. And we're going to talk about grief and art, and also we're going to be talking about how we lived our different experiences, losing our mothers to cancer, all of the processes that we went through during their diseases a little bit, and the time to say goodbye and the grief afterwards, and talking about this human experience that we go through when we're letting go somebody that we love. And these are important topics to talk about. And in her case, she used art to like catalyze or change what she was feeling towards these grieving emotions. Obviously, every person deals with grief in a very different way, but in this case, Kat made a beautiful exposition honoring her mother, but it began in a very different light. And we will listen to her talk about this experience and what she learned from it and the importance of art in our lives, particularly when we are dealing with grief. So let me tell you a little bit more about Kat. Kat's work explores the universal notions of transience, loss, grief, oneness, and impermanence. Through participatory installations that combine aspects of performance, video, photography, and sound, she places herself in emotionally and spiritually trying states in order to overcome personal boundaries of pain and experience the mythopoetic transformational power of art. She is the recipient of the South Florida Cultural Consortium Fellowship 2013. Some exhibitions of Kat's work include South Florida Cultural Consortium 2013 at the Museum of Art, Fort Lauderdale, Aesthetics and Values at the Patricia and Philip Frost Art Museum. You Are Always Here at Dimensions Variable. 1983, You Are Always Here at the Colombian Consulate in Coral Gables. The 5th Biennial at the Art and Culture Center of Hollywood and Facsimile at Girls Club Collection. Her works can be found in collections such as Girls Club, Bonnie Taylor Swerdloff, Amy Pollack, the Mosquera Collection, from Design Co. and the U.S. Colombian Consulate. So this is going to be a long conversation, so bear with us because we're talking about human experiences and pouring our hearts out, and it's very worthwhile to stay until the very end to see the pearls of wisdom that we've come to in our different experiences with death, grief, and also using art as a way of making this love persevere. So thank you, Synchronauts, and welcome to this episode. Hope that you like it and hope that it's very, very useful for you all. Hello, Synchronauts, and welcome to another episode of the Zuvuya Sessions. My name is Aida, and I'm very happy to have you here. And I have a very, very special guest, very close to my heart, my sister from another mister, Miss Catalina Jaramillo. She's in the United States right now. How is the weather over there in Florida?
Insane. You want to see a little bit? It's basically a very warm paradise.
Wow. Yeah, I can see. I'm expecting a crocodile to just come by at some point.
Sometimes there's a threat that there might be there's alligators sometimes on that lake. So yeah, it's absolutely possible.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah, it's nice to be close to nature, but sometimes you have to be very mindful as well because yeah, it can be a bit dangerous. It's so nice to connect with you, dear Kat. We've known each other for a few months, but it feels like we've known each other forever. And I'm so happy that you're here with me today to talk about a topic that is very close to my heart as well, which is how do we turn our grief into art, you know, but also because it's amazing how we have so many things in common, you and I, even in many life events that are so similar, no? We both lost our mothers to cancer. And obviously, as a daughter, the way you feel the parting of your mother is different from a brother, no? And especially us who are Latino women, it is expected of us that we have to be there more than the men, no? So the way we experience the moment when we have to let go of our mothers, but also the process behind our grieving, we lived it very differently, but you're an artist. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about your background? What did you study, and when did you start doing this art thing, which I already saw some of the articles you shared with me before our meeting, and I'm really in awe with everything that you do. So can you tell us a little bit more about it, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and finally have this conversation that we've been having mentally and spiritually, and now we're having it in the flesh.
Yeah.
I was born in Colombia, and I did a couple of semesters of visual arts in Colombia before we moved here. They transferred my dad, and we all migrated to the States in 2000. And so I am a nerd at heart, and I went to school for many years. I studied religious studies, have a bachelor's in religious studies, a bachelor's in visual arts with a focus on performance, installation. And then I did a master's in Asian studies with a focus on international relations, because I've been obsessed since I was very little with art. It was later, especially when my mom got sick, that everything changed. I remember the day I took her to the hospital to get her first test. She had a crazy kidney stone, like a very, very painful kidney stone that she thought was more related to her post-pregnancy. She had just given birth to my brother, Nico. And so she thought it was pregnancy related. Thank God that kidney stone was so hardcore, because her pain threshold was very, very high. So probably without that kidney stone, we wouldn't have gone to the hospital. And had we not gone to the hospital, by the time we got to the hospital, she needed immediate surgery. And so on the day, like, my book that I brought to read at the hospital is not necessarily when I found out she was sick, but very synchronically, it was a mixture of being an immigrant with, like, really evaluating my life. Life here was completely different. I basically lived in a suburban paradise, which is very different from a post-colonial, pre-modern, third world Bogota in Colombia.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes.
I was super independent. It was just very, very different. So the day I came to the hospital, I had with me a book by Carolyn Myss that combined healing, Kabbalah, the 7 sacraments. It was one of my first, like, interests in such different modalities that in time became very, very synchronic. So after my mom got sick, and as a product of all of that I just told you, my interest became not international, but I became almost obsessed with what makes us similar. What, in all religions, what are the commonalities? How can I translate Kabbalah into the 7 sacraments that have to do with Jesus, and, like, completely different, and chakras? I think she even included chakras, and I was fascinated. I'm obsessed with the idea of almost translating, like, almost like a Solking, like being able to translate any religion or culture into a universal one. So that's more or less how it started.
So and it's interesting because we have that in common, that we see that there is a oneness within all cultures and all religions and all traditions. And it's interesting because we both work very closely with the Tzolk'in, The Dream Spell by Jose Argüelles, and that is giving us, like, a framework to understand the world. But we also know that that is one point of view. There are many different points of view, and it's very related to art. And so it gives us a way to express our individuality, our individual energies, which are changing year after year. But how do we turn our synchronicities, or how do we turn our life experiences into art, even though they might be so hard to talk about or to deal with? Because in this modern society, and tell me, especially you that you live in the States, it might be more evident to you. We are always trying to avoid the bad stuff, no? Like death. We don't want to talk about death. We don't want to talk about suffering or pain or whatever. And I think that we're missing a big part of our humanity if we deny ourselves living that, no? And with the time is art paradigm, we're like, no, let it come, and it will hurt. It will be hard, but we're feeling alive because of it. So, and then what happened with your mom? Because she had also a long illness, no? My mother had, well, like 6 or 7 years of an illness before she passed away. And your mother, I think it was the same, right?
So the day that we go for that kidney stone, they do tests for 4, 5, 6 hours. I didn't know much about anything, and at that point I was 20. I had my brother Andy with me, who was like 12 or 13, and Nico literally in a car seat, and we're just waiting in the hospital. I wasn't really aware. I wasn't panicking, thinking, oh, if it's 4 hours. I was just thinking they're reviewing everything. It's better that they just are very thorough. And by like 9 or 10 p.m., when my dad comes to the hospital after work, they tell him she has a tumor that is the size of a brick. And
Wow.
it's immediate surgery. We're not starting the surgery now just because it's late, but at 5 in the morning, we're gonna have 6 surgeons working with her. That surgery is gonna last about 4 to 5 hours. Unfortunately, she might not make it because her surgery is pretty intense. Should she make it, in the event that you guys are so lucky and she makes it, she won't last more than 6 months because her cancer is stage 4 ovarian that had already affected the membrane of the digestive system, etc. And I think because Nico was such a baby, he was a baby, something in her just, she was not going to give up. I remember her looking at studies, and the most generous study said that 3 to 5% of people make it over 5 years with that cancer. And I think she just created some kind of equation. She used to call Nico my little engine, in Spanish, my motorcito, and their dynamic was completely different. They have a very, very, very unique bond. But this woman was a trooper. She went to weekly chemo, like no hair, no skin, no weekly chemo. And Nico almost wouldn't see. Of course, Nico knew she was suffering, but it was very much like, hey, do you want to go and check out a toy store right after chemo? But because of that, she was, I don't know, the mind is very powerful, but it was a combination. She also trusted she had an oncologist that she developed a very close relationship with, and he was very progressive. So there are many, many things he would like to try that, of course, including me, for the common person, a new treatment, something that hasn't been tested when you have cancer sounds terrifying. But she is very different, and she had a bond with him. And they tried new kinds of chemos that at the time were revolutionary, because they were like, imagine like little tiny spinning gremlins that only attack cancer cells. So she survived 10 years after her diagnosis, which is, I mean, she's probably the only person who has lived 10 years with stage 4 ovarian cancer. She was a trooper. She was like a life force for Nico. Nico was very, very, very key in that. I don't know she would have lasted that, she would have endured the torture that is chemo if Nico wasn't so young.
I think it's interesting, no? Sometimes when people get sick, like in my mother's case, she had actually breast cancer, and then she went into remission, and then it came back to her brain, and that's what really was it for her. But all these years that she was like in remission and everything, her little motor, as you are saying, her little engine was my niece Constanza. So I've also found that sometimes with some cancer survivors, what is pushing them to continue living is young life, because you're like, I have to be there for them, no? Especially in the case of your mother, of course, it was her little baby. Like, how can I not be here for him at least the first few years of his life? And I just want to mention something that I hope that will change in the medical arena. And that is what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls the voodoo curse, which is, why do doctors think that they have like a godlike power to say, oh, you only have 6 months to live? And you're like, excuse me, like, how would you know that, like, maybe I can revert this? Because there are many cases where people, and this is interesting, now they say, oh, you're going to die of cancer, you have 6 weeks and whatever. And actually, I think it was with him that they mentioned this case of this man who was they told him, just you have, I don't know, 3 months to live or something like that. And it was very close to Christmas. And so he said, I just want to be there for Christmas, and after Christmas I can die, because then I will be with my family and we will celebrate. And then what happened is, I think the very next day, like I'm paraphrasing the story, no? But like the next day or a few days later, he passed away. And so obviously they did an autopsy to see like what happened, no? What did it? There was no trace of cancer, Kat. Yeah. So that's when you think like, and how the mind is so powerful that sometimes when somebody gives you the voodoo curse, and if you believe it, and you say, okay, I'm gonna go with it, then I'm just gonna die, you know? And it's really unfair, I think, that doctors do this to people when it should be like, I cannot give you a time span because nobody is God. Like, okay, I realize, yes, of course you are sick. We have to do something about it. You can choose, there are many treatments. For example, my mother decided not to go for chemotherapy or any of that. She went with natural treatments, and she had a very good quality of life. Like, that's it, no? But just like, why are they doing that? They shouldn't be doing that. We have to let people decide what they want to do in terms of their body and how they want to heal, no? And just doing that, I think that sometimes it's like, it can be very terrifying, as you said. And also it's not good. Like, how can I trust that I will heal if my own doctor is giving me a death sentence? And I think
Exactly.
that's something very big that has to be a part of the conversation between people like you and me who have gone through this, and those who are going through that as well, that they are living right now a moment with a loved one who is dying or they're sick, and maybe things can be lived a little bit different, no? I don't know, how was your experience in terms of that with your mom?
I think she, because of Nico, she just was never gonna take it. I mean, 6 months then, and I relate to that. You just tell me that something can be done, or you cannot do 2 degrees at the same time. You cannot. Nobody has done this, and that's the perfect thing you can tell me to prove you wrong. So I think it was a combo of proving them wrong with just the yeah, the not the fear of not being there for him, because she was brilliant about it. It's almost like, you know how there's like concentrated drops and diluted drops. Her motherhood with Nico was all concentrated. Like every minute, the way they played, the way they would shower, the way he would like hang on to her. They just had such a bond. She was absolutely there. Whereas maybe in the past, and I'm not comparing, I mean, I am comparing, but not as a victim, but I can also see the difference. When you're in your 20s, it's your first kid. You have no idea what you're doing. You just are projecting your fears with, it's a very different thing. You're
Yes.
still trying to please, you're still trying to do it right. You're still trying to figure out who you are outside of being a mom. Whereas with him was, all of that had already gone out the window. The priority is this kid. Being focused on this kid will allow me to not think of these awful things that I could easily go into an insane depression too, because
Yeah.
I don't ever want to imagine what that feels like.
Yes.
Um, but by concentrating, she was so present. She found a way, she hacked it. I mean, I'm sure by the time she left, she she had resolved so many heavy issues in her life. She had completely mastered, she turned her life around, and Nico definitely got like 40 years in 10.
That's good, in a way that she had this awareness that she could do it and do it differently, and it's normal, like, because we are also are the first children in our families, and so the first child, we're also, yes, as you say, no, your parents have no idea what they're doing, and all of these traumas and fears and everything, they're projected onto us, and then the baby comes, no, the youngest, and they're like, ah, let him eat dirt and whatever, and you're like, why did you ask so much of me? And you're
Yes.
letting this little person
Yes.
do whatever he wants. But it's not, I think it's a part of motherhood and fatherhood, just like go through that. But also the role we have as the eldest is just look at what is happening and just realize that my mother and my father did the best they could with me at that point. No, and I understand that
Mhm.
it's going to be different for the younger ones, and we get to learn from their mistakes as well. I think that is something very important. that we get to learn from the mistakes and also from their disease, no? So, for example, for you, what did you learn through your mother's disease?
Through my mother's disease, I learned the power. At the same time, I became a Buddhist or found Buddhism. I don't know if I necessarily became a Buddhist. When I was in Colombia, I was very much an atheist because the only options in Colombia were hardcore, church-based, creed, dogma, church, Catholic Church, or not. And it may sound a little critical, but I think to only have those two options is very damaging. You only have option A, punishing God, where at the same time, you can sin Monday through Saturday, you just give 20,000 pesos on Sunday and you're set.
Exactly.
That never really connected, that punishment, I couldn't. So if that was the only option, only God option, alternative of God, that option, or no God, I conceptually became an atheist. But you know me, I believe there's a greater everything of the everything. Yeah. So when I moved here, I found Buddhism, and through her, by her being sick and me training. And Buddhism is fascinating because you're conceptually still an atheist, because in Buddhism, there's no God. So it was like a good segue into considering myself spiritual, because the other burden with that Catholic option is not only that you have an awareness where you wish people saw God differently. The reason why I fought with that idea of God is that if that was the only case and that was the truth and the only option, that creature, that being must hate me because I was born with sin. I still haven't done this. When I was 9, I used to bite my brother's nose and I would like make him cry because I was jealous. So I've also been jealous. I've also like threw away my mom's earrings. So all of a sudden I remember being 9 or 10 and having full-on nightmares where for some reason when the earth would open, Judgment Day, he was going to choose me like first. Like, yeah, you don't think he's going to start with Hitler, like with a really Judgment Day? Yeah, the person who was mean to her brother. So if you live in this condemnation and fear, believing in something greater that you already failed, I have enough of those in life, you know, like I don't need the superhero of I am a failure. Yeah. So Buddhism allowed me to see things differently, plus all these books, and eating differently. My mission, in a way, became to heal my mom. I said, I'm going to use the power of Buddhism and art, and I am going to find a way to literally my thesis for my graduation as a bachelor, blah, blah, blah. In my thesis, which now sounds so preposterous and crazy, but I'm still loving it. I said my thesis was in sculpture because through chanting and through just changing our consciousness, I was gonna carve cancer out of my mom's body. So that was sculpting. Of course, the teachers were like, this is brilliant. This is so conceptually great. Right before the thesis needed to be supported, etc., she was briefly on remission. So of course, imagine the ego trip I went on. I think I even went to like a Buddhist meeting to express how I had healed my mom, which is the most arrogant and preposterous thing, but it's kind of what I needed at the time. It was like a way to see that being spiritual works, that your focus works, that art can have a purpose besides. I don't paint for the sake of painting. I can't make art for the sake of putting in a gallery and hopefully making calls and meeting people I don't like for them to purchase my work. No, art is for me a way to put myself in impossible situations. Whereas if I didn't do it through art, I would find a way to not deal with them. I would deny them, I would think that I addressed them. But through art, since I have to do it right and I have to follow protocol, then sometimes I'm in situations where I'm like, what did I just do to myself? But it's the only way I can force myself to do certain processes.
Process it and be present with it. Because that's what we were just saying a few minutes ago, like in these modern situations we are in, and we're with the cell phone and just checking Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, whatever. we don't take time to be with ourselves and with our own feelings, and that can be very unhealthy. Some people get sick because of that, because if you don't face your emotions, you're going to get sick, definitely. But something that strikes a chord with me, because that happened with me and with my mom too, like I felt responsible for healing her. I don't know why. Sometimes this phenomenon takes place, no? When we see somebody that is sick in our family, we feel responsible for healing them. When, and well, for me at least, after my mother passed away, it was very evident that this was her journey. I was just there to support her and to just hold space for her, and she had to do what she had to do. But in this dynamic, and maybe this is because we're Latinas again, I am repeating, I don't know if that's why, if it's just because we're women or because we're Latino women, that they expect us to do this. No, and in a way, my mother, I don't know if it happened to you with your mom, but with my mom, it was like she wouldn't take her medication unless I gave it to her. And obviously, every time she came out of the hospital, I had to be the one dressing the wounds and being there with her, which is okay, no? In a way, I was like, okay, well, she took care of me. She gave birth to me. Like, I get to do this service for her. But because I have my dad and my two brothers, like the men were not there doing that. It was my chore, no? My job. So, and that's why I even felt more responsible for her. Like, and I remember I was freaking out once, like there was this big clot that came out of one of her wounds, and I was like, and I just called the doctor, like, what is this? And he's like, don't freak out, this is normal, just no. But I felt so responsible for her, like if she dies, it's gonna be my fault. I felt like that even just a few hours before she passed away. I don't know if that happened to you.
Maybe not so much with the she was very, very responsible. She carried her little extra bag. We would be stopped at the airport because she had like an extra bag that just had the probably 20, 30 pills that she had to every day. She just had to take so many things. Wounds wise and surgery wise, she only had that first surgery. So it was more along the line, I wanted to emotionally almost like be a husband, but like a superhero daughter. I think partially it's trauma response, because I know a lot of Latina daughters who, whatever, I mean, you know, they're doing the best they can, but I know a lot of women and a lot of Latina daughters and a lot of non-Latina daughters, not a lot of them, but enough that I've seen that we're special. I don't know if there's a certain level of trauma response, without sounding like a victim, where I don't think I necessarily unconsciously felt responsible for her cancer, but I felt responsible for providing whatever she needed emotionally. And so, and I was also so proud of loving in this almost codependent way. Like there was nothing I enjoyed more than like telling a teacher that I can make it to this class that I love. I'm a nerd. My classes in school, especially art, like my good art teachers, I don't want to skip a minute of it, but I would feel so proud that I'm canceling because, as you know, and let my mom know that I'm able to cancel whatever, I'll move whatever. I just wanted her to think that I could like stop time and be there for her. So it wasn't so much like in the physical, but as you tell me and I do it. I think in the beginning, when I got my first jobs here at the States, I remember I would spend sometimes most of my paycheck wanting to get her little pajamitas and a bike for Nico so that they both can play. It was semi-dysfunctional, but very endearing. And I don't know if a lot of people do that, not because we're incredible, but sometimes I look around and I don't know if a lot of people would go. My kid adores me, but I don't know if he necessarily would turn his life around, make it my mission, wonder how he could become someone else to heal me. I think he's wiser. I think in a way it was a little bit of ignorance on our part.
Yes, probably. But also, yeah, like it's the programming that we've had, no? But I've seen that other people are like that. They especially in Latino communities, women are expected to deal with many things men don't, that have to do with health. And because it was very interesting for me to listen to you say, I felt responsible and I felt that I had healed her. And I felt the same too, no? Like I have to do so much, like move heaven and earth to heal her. When now, obviously, after that experience, I can look back and say, it was never my healing to be done. It had to be her, and she didn't want it.
Mhm.
So, and to just like put yourself aside from that, you know, and it takes a big weight off your shoulders because you're like, it was never my task to heal her. It was just, I just had to be there for them, and that's it. No?
Right. It just sounds so impossible. Even hearing you
Yeah.
say it, I don't, now that we're wiser, older, I don't know if I would do it any different. I would probably still like quit a job to take her to chemo. Um, it's very, very, very difficult to not feel.
Mhm.
It's also, it's very interesting because we both feel also like we could save the world, or we could like our what we add to a project, to an initiative, our voice matters, our point of view is unique, we have a power. So when it comes to like world peace, we think we have power. How could I then say that my mom, we share DNA? At some point, we were one cell that split in two. I
Yeah.
am a chunk, I'm like the rib of her.
Mhm.
What do you mean I can't heal her? It still sounds like I would still think I could in a
Okay.
strange way.
Okay, that's interesting. There's something about that's the way we love in a way, I think, no?
Yeah.
And in my case, I would think it, I mean, obviously I would be there every step of the way,
Mhm.
but I would know that she's not my responsibility. She's her own responsibility. That's
Right.
the
You need
difference.
a
And I
response.
think knowing that, like, if somebody's listening to us right now who's going through a situation like that, and you're feeling responsible for your loved one who is sick, just know that it's not your responsibility to heal them. You just have to be there for them and love them. And yes, if you want to care for them, that's good, but don't feel like it's your responsibility to heal them or that whatever is happening to them is your fault, you
Right.
know? And in my case, what happened is a few days, like once we figured out that my mom had a brain tumor, and we had a big scare a couple of years ago, and we thought this is a brain tumor. And that back then she was okay. It wasn't that. She just had a big clinical depression
Mhm.
that made her be like a little baby. It was really weird.
Mhm.
And then when she actually got the tumor, we thought it was just an EVC, you know, like something going on with her brain, like
Mhm.
maybe a small stroke. That's what
Mhm.
we thought because her mother had a stroke as well. So we thought,
Mhm.
well, this is it, no? Slurred speech, and she couldn't move so easily. And we took her to the doctor, and he said, no, it's probably this. So just give her some medication and take it easy and whatnot. And then when we finally take her to hospital on January the 1st, New Year, oh my, yeah, exactly. It was like so, so crazy. So we take her to, because here in Mexico, back then we had this free healthcare system. So we took her to one of these hospitals. There were no doctors, no
Mhm.
specialists. So until 2 days later, we found out that she had a brain tumor. It was inoperable, and but they didn't tell us like what was happening. No, they never told us. You know what? She's dying. There's nothing to do. Just take her to the beach or whatever. They just said, no, we're gonna give her medicine and it will just shrink and disappear. Like we got lied to, and that's something that I'm still very angry about because they lied to us. But well, we're not talking about it. The
Mhm.
thing is, what I'm coming to is the doctor that was taking care of us outside this hospital. We had a big telephone conversation, and he said, "You know what? She's gonna probably say some hurtful things to you, and she's gonna want to make you responsible for her what's happening to her. It's not your fault. What is you have done everything you were meant to do as a daughter and be there. It's not your responsibility. It's not your fault." And for him to tell me this, because I was feeling very guilty, I was like, this is my fault. I didn't give her medicine well. I wasn't there for her when I was really there. But this
Right.
happened to me. And so, and this is why I think it's very important to have these conversations with somebody who has gone through something similar. Obviously, your point of view is very different. But I don't know, what do you think about this? Did it ever happen to you that didn't you feel guilty after the cancer came back and you were like, oh my God, I didn't heal her. What did I do wrong? Did
I
any of
think
those things came to your mind?
it was more like a challenge, like okay, maybe we haven't done, let's tweak it, but there's still a chance. Now, halfway into it, what semi-complicated are not our dynamic, but this whole thing. So from the moment she's diagnosed until like maybe 2006, she's my life. We go everywhere. I take her everywhere. She knows all my professors. If I have a final for my thesis for graduation, we both installed it. We both performed for certain exhibitions. But then in 2006, I became a mom. And so the last few years were very different. I was in a different county. I was a new mom, completely into it. And so it's not that we separated. I think around that time what changed, she was not my obsession in a way, because my kid had become my obsession. So I felt a little responsible, not that I had become a mom, but that now I was further. Am I not as present? Is this gonna get worse because I'm not there? Which is again back to this double-edged sword where you think you're not that important, but at the same time you're the center of the universe, because you living in another county shouldn't really affect your mom's health, but because I feel like you're saying so responsible for every choice. So towards the end it was more of like a longing, we try to still meet all the time. She would drive a lot south. I would come north a lot to be with her. And towards the end, I had like 2 jobs. I think my last year before she passed was just in panic, just with my phone available at all times, just in case I get a crazy text. She was in the ICU for maybe for the 7 months of that last year. I had just purchased a house close to the hospital she went to towards the end. Not necessarily to be close to that hospital. It was synchronic, but it was perfect because it was like 5 minutes away, and it gave me against this sense of, oh, okay, I'm part of it and I'm an active part of it, to the point where I would work I would work a lot, then go to school I was doing my master's so that I could pay for the house that I had purchased, then get the kid with my partner. My partner was very active. My kid's father was very helpful. He would pick up the kid and we would drive every single day to Aventura Hospital to be there until they kicked us out, exhausted, to go home, to start another day, to do it all over again. Until one day I got a text, your mom passed, come right now to the hospital.
Wow. Yeah, I think it must have been, the draining of being in that for 7 months. Wow. Wow. I really admire you because I mean, for my mother, it was just like a few weeks really. And there were 4 of us, like my dad, my 2 brothers and me. And it was like, we were pooped, it was like so hard.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it at the moment. Now in retrospect, when I have a Zoom meeting, then I have to work, and by the time I come home, I'm like, there's no way I'll do yoga today. I'm exhausted. Sometimes I think, wait a minute, so how were you a new mom, a new homeowner, your mom was dying, you were doing also a master's degree, and you had a job? And at that point was just like joyous. It was a little bit like, we get to like a family get together. Of course, there were days that I was just exhausted, but in general, it was just like this joy to have another day to hang all together. I love and my mom is very similar. The idea that my dad was there, if I felt like I was there for 7 months, my dad was there for 7 months. Though the entire ICU, everything, my father was there before they let people in the hospital, and would have to physically be kicked out the days that he wouldn't stay over. So if I think it was stressful and heavy for me, I can't imagine what it was for him. But it was still joyous. We still would like smile and like found our favorites from the hospital cafeteria and would make jokes because now we knew the menu. I think he started getting like a staff discount. um so we made the best of it. It never felt at the time like, oh, I can't believe, when is this going to be over because I have too much on my plate. It being so busy probably allowed me to deal with it. I think if I had a lot of time to think and meditate about it, I probably would have gotten depressed. I think actually now talking to you, I think I stopped my schedule with like, okay, so what else? What should I join a class at night so that I have also something to do in between the hospital and sleeping? I think I wanted no time on my own to think about what was happening.
I think that makes a lot of sense, definitely. And tell me, didn't because at some point it's very evident that your loved one is beginning to die, they're beginning their transition. Didn't the hospital ever give you the possibility of taking her to hospice care or to go home to have her transition?
No, never. And I think she would have never agreed. I mean, they never, when she was just diagnosed, they still had a chance to get some insane life insurance. The United States has life insurances that are just ridiculous. You become basically like a billionaire when someone dies. And they never did it. She didn't get life insurance. She didn't even sign any kind of, I think maybe 2 or 3 days before she died, we kind of would carefully ask what she would like in her dream world, who would be a good replacement for Nico. Like who do you idealize if you were to give your care to someone? Who do you think would represent you for what Nico needs? But it was still very hush hush, and I don't think she even understood the question. I think we would ask it so carefully. She didn't have a do not resuscitate. That subject, death, was not a subject we ever discussed. It was almost like we're going to the hospital hoping that you never know. Maybe tomorrow she'll leave jogging the hospital. No, there's no way. She has tubes, she's connected, she's miserable. And we still, to the last moment, just thought, well, you never know. You know, stranger things happen. You never know. Maybe this Christmas we will all go to another country.
Yes, I think that is a problem as well. When doctors realize that person is dying, they should let families know and say, you know what, this person is suffering, or this is not good enough. So maybe we need to change a little bit about those things. So why do you think you never talked about this part with your mother? Were you scared to talk about it, face it? Why do you think that? Because this happens to a lot of people. This is very normal. But in your case, why?
I think she was in denial. I think she never, I mean, it was obvious that it's a terminal disease, but because she had already been in remission and because she had an amazing team, I think she never, I mean, of course, towards the end, but maybe the very, very end, I only saw her scared, physically scared. Actually, never truly saw her scared. One day we had like a crying, very bonding, beautiful conversation, but she was scared more of like what's gonna happen. Like I don't want to leave. It wasn't a oh, this pain. My aunt, who was there when she actually passed, I was at work. So the last couple of minutes, she describes that it was the most painful because she was just in a sheer panic. She would look at her a little bit like when you're being, I can't imagine, and I wasn't there, and I'm pretty sure the face my aunt did when she was trying to reenact it was spot on. And just from her doing the version of whatever, I don't know if I would have been able to. I'm glad I didn't see that. She said it was just sheer panic, just like anguish and not wanting to go. It's almost like it caught her off guard. Like she was almost surprised by it in a way. I think the element of denial played and actually, I'm nobody to say that denial is a lack of consciousness or whatever, because bottom line, she survived 10 years. So whatever combination she did was the combination to do. But yeah, death was not, there was never, it was just a combo of denial and also a little bit like, that's not my place. Like, I'm not gonna, I've worked so hard to heal her. I'm not gonna like break the news and ask her. It just was very difficult. It was very, very difficult.
Yes, I can imagine, especially after all the time in the hospital, everything that you went through. It makes a lot of sense. And we all go through that denial. It's normal. It's a part of that, you know, as you're seeing your loved one die, and it's so evident, but you're like, no, this is not happening. Because it
Mhm.
happened to my family as well. I remember because at the hospital, we did talk about this. We have talked about this as a family, like
Mhm.
we've said, okay, we have no DNR, like do not resuscitate, like, we don't want to have the tubes or anything. That's how we rolled in this family. No, so we had
Mhm.
talked about this with my mother, but many years before, like not during the crisis. I think that makes a difference. I think it's important for people who are listening to us, have these conversations while people are healthy, so that
Yeah,
when the hard times come, you will be prepared, and you don't have to deal with the pain of, oh, I have to realize that the person I love is dying, and I have to ask this very sensitive question, and I want to freak them out, just like it
exactly.
happened with your mom, no? Like you're freak because you're living that, and you don't like. I can't imagine, no, how hard it must be with this hospital and these people and cold environment. It's not home, but this is your state of mind because you want to survive, because you want to. She was such a warrior mom that it
Mhm.
makes sense that she would face that moment in such a way, no, until
Mhm.
you have no other place to go. That's
Mhm.
it, no, this is
Mhm.
out of your control completely. And
Mhm.
so with my mother, we had talked about this a long time before that. So when at the hospital, they said, okay, we have to intubate because she wasn't eating anymore. And they tried to put one of those, tubes to feed her, and her body wouldn't take it. No, for us, that was a sign like, you know what, she's getting ready to go, maybe, or maybe she wants to go home. And as you say, no, no, she's gonna get up and she's gonna
Right.
come back. No, we have
Right.
that hope. It's very normal. So at the hospital, they said, okay, it's time to intubate her. And we said, okay, will that make a difference? And they said no. And they said, okay, we're bringing her back home. No. And doctors, no, why do you want to do that? And we're like, there's nothing else for her here to be done. Let's bring her back home. So we brought her home. And the next, and when we were coming, preparing everything for her to come back home, my dad was like, no, tomorrow I'm going to go see a doctor, and I'm gonna like we still were
Right. Right.
very much in denial,
Right.
and she was actively dying by then.
Right.
So I think that this is also very interesting to notice that this is a common thing to go through. If your loved one is going through death, you're gonna still be in denial, like, no, this is, and it's, I think it's a psychological way to protect yourself,
Right.
no? Like,
Right.
I don't want to face this. It's so painful. I don't want to face it. And it
Right.
happened to us as well. And in my case with my mom, she did die at home, but something that made a big difference as well, because we had this nurse he was amazing. And we have this in Mexico, like grief counseling, it's called tanatología. So these are people who are specialized, and I've asked in the United States or Canada or other countries, they don't really have that kind of specialty. This is something very common in Latin America and Mexico. It's beginning to shift over there. Maybe you have heard about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, for example. She was a pioneer in that kind of grief counseling. Oh, you should read her. I think you're going to love her. She was at the deathbed of many people, asking them the hard questions, no? What are you feeling? What are your thoughts on death? Uh, with children, with older people, all kinds of people. And she was there with them. And she has many books and she talks about it. So this nurse, he was a grief counselor, and we had, my mother was kind of like in a coma, she was asleep, but she was like, she could still hear us, and that he told us that she can still hear you. So if there's anything you want to tell her, talk to her, no? And we were talking about how many people are on their deathbeds, waiting for somebody to come over and say, you know, I'm sorry, or like there's some pending business and they don't want to go because of that, no?
Mhm. Mhm.
So he said it's important that they are released from this burden that they have, because sometimes they stay alive for years in very precarious conditions because they're
Mhm.
waiting to have like this closing of a cycle with a loved one, something is pending. And so this conversation was very useful for us, because after he left, like for example, my mother came back to home from the hospital on a Wednesday night at 10 p.m. And the
Mhm.
next day by 7 p.m., she passed away. Like it was super fast. Yeah. But what helped us was this conversation we had with him in front of her, even though she was asleep. And after he left, I stayed with my mom, my brother, and my father. They had to go do some work because life goes on at the same time, which is infuriating, no?
Right.
Like you're going through this
Right.
and so infuriating, like we still have to go to work and we still have to eat and we still have to do these things. And so I stayed with her and said, Mom, I love you. I'm gonna miss you, but if you need to go, just go. We'll take care of anything because she left many pending things. I said, don't you worry, we'll take care of this. I'll take care of my dad, make sure that he's okay. We're gonna be okay if you need to go. And it was very hard for me to say this, no, to her. And I think it was very important for me to say that like don't worry, because sometimes if you're at the deathbed of your loved one and you're like, please don't die, don't leave me alone, it makes it harder for them to go, and there it brings a lot more pain. So I am sharing this because it's amazing how different our experiences are. We have so much in common with our mothers, but in my case it was like, you know what, I'm letting you go, I love you. And I was there with her, and it was so different because we had my father here and my two brothers, their wives, and my two nieces and my nephew. They were very young. They were like the youngest ones. They were like, I don't know, 3 years old, something like that. Yeah, 3 years old. And the eldest one, she was like 9 years old. And we were there with her, everybody, and we put music for her, and we brought out some wine, and she loved beer. So my middle brother, he put some beer on her lips, like, to you, Mom, we love you. So it was very surreal to say she's dying. I don't want to feel this, but at the same time, we decided to go full on it, just like embrace it and just live it. And I remember when I told my eldest niece Constanza, she was 9, when I told her she's dying, I'm sorry to tell you she's dying. She was like, no, I don't want her to die. And I said, I know, my love, but when we go see her, please don't cry, because if she's gonna be worried, and instead of going, she's gonna want to stay and she's gonna suffer. So please, my love, don't cry in front of her. We'll cry later together. So we were full of love with her and her music, and all the songs she liked. And there's even in the afternoon before, we were watching a movie she loved, which is While You Were Sleeping, with Sandra Bullock. I don't know if you have watched that movie, but it was very funny. No, she's sleeping now and she's getting ready to go. So we went through this as a family. And then she took her final breath, and we just took the time to be there and cry and just experience it instead of running away from it. Because many people they say, I'm not ready to face it. And it's normal. I think it's very, very human to say, I don't want to face it. But I would say, from my experience, it's worth it. Face the pain and be there, even though it hurts like freaking hell, because it does. Just like be there and live the moment. And it was very powerful to see. Like I felt like I was the like the doula, a death doula for my mom. Like she delivered me into this world, and then I got to deliver her to the other world. And something very magical happened as well when it was all said and done and she was gone, and we were preparing the funeral and everything, and waiting for the people to come over and put her in the casket and all of this. My youngest, the eldest niece, Constanza, she said, Auntie, can we put some makeup on Grandma? And I said, of course, my love. So we put makeup on my mother. My other brother and me, we dressed her up with a very nice suit that she had. And then she was put in the casket. And it's really amazing because I have many dogs. Maybe some of their barking could be listened a little bit. So these dogs were alive. We had them here when my mother was dying, and they knew that something was up because one of them was trying to get into the room with her. And so when finally they put her in the casket, and I let the dogs in at night, and I spent the night with my mother in her casket, and I wasn't afraid. I was just full of love. I was like, these are the last hours I'm gonna be with her body, because I know that she's still there. You can feel it. But I was like, no, I want to live this. And it was so full of love and beautiful. It wasn't like something to be afraid of or something like, oh, how gross and disgusting. No, it's
Mhm.
honoring the person you love, that
Mhm.
their body's still there. And
Mhm.
something really cute happened. My mother loved ladybugs. And
Mhm.
so just a couple of hours after she passed, a ladybug appeared in the room. So when I saw the ladybug, I was like, this is a sign. She's okay. She's telling me that she is okay. And it was February. Like February, there are no ladybugs where I live in that time of the year. So you pay attention to the synchronicities as well. I don't know if you had some of these synchronicities on your own after your mother passed. And I would like to know because, well, I'm telling my story, but as well, I want to know your story. What happened once they tell you your mother passed away? What did you do? Right, like right in that minute, what happened?
Right in that minute, I'm in the middle of a staff meeting, and uh, so I checked the phone. My dad literally, it was a text. It's so heartbreaking. Literally, tu mamá se murió. Ven al hospital.
Oof.
Okay. So I put the phone down. I'm working, so I have to get permission. But my boss, so I was the curator of a museum. She's the director of the museum, but we had been working ever since I was a student from the beginning. She looked at me and she's like, "You're the kind of nerd I'm never gonna let go. We need to work together. You need to be my employee." So at that point, I had worked with her for maybe since I graduated. So maybe for 8 years on and off. She, of course, had met my mom a million times. I think we've even gone to her house because, as I told you, my mom, in a way, became like not my daughter because that's arrogant, but in a way, wherever I went, she was welcome.
Like your
Uh,
charge, you were in
yeah,
charge of her. Yeah.
and but also like make it fun. Like, hey, do you want to go to Carol Damian's house and look at slides of like Latin American artists? Yeah, of course, I would love to.
Uh-huh.
And we would do everything. So the first person I think of is Carol. Plus, also I have to get permission. And I just look at her. I'm like, my mom just died, and she hugs me. It was like the most delicious motherly hug ever. I still remember. I called my kid's father at that time. We were still together, and he said, "I'll pick you up right now." We both worked in the same campus in the same
Mhm.
university. So he picked me up. We flew to the hospital, and my dad, which this is so my dad did not want them to take her away at all.
Of course.
He kept her as long as it was legally possible,
Mhm.
um, because he didn't want to see her leave, but he wanted us to see her. So he waited, like she was not removed until everyone made it to the room. So she
Okay.
had bed maybe for an hour, let's say at most an hour and a half by then.
Okay.
But what I did, when you were just telling me this, the part that I wanted to share, which is not necessarily related to my mom, it's related to my dad's mom, who passed in 2005. She didn't get a chance to meet my brother. A similar situation in Colombia, they did have, my grandma had my aunt, my dad's brother, who is a lot like us. She's the wise, she's spectacular. So she was very DNR, and she's going to have a quality of life. She had a stroke,
Okay.
and she was taken to the hospital. She called my dad. So she's still in Colombia. She called my dad and my uncle. My dad and I flew to Colombia. So by the time we got there, she was already on her way out. It was, somebody did pull us. It was a very different thing from the United States. I think
Yes.
also because it was similar to yours, where it was like,
Mhm.
he came in this situation, so it's easier to like address it. I think in our situation, we knew everyone in the floor. I think it was just, I think it's not that they were in denial, but I think the dynamic was a little different because she was almost
Yeah.
like a resident who was part of all of us. She also, to make things even more confusing, she did have a very, very brief, like maybe 2 week, it could have been 1 week, it's all kind of blurry, it could have been a month, but in
Mhm.
between that ICU era, she did get a chance to go back home briefly. So I think
Okay.
that didn't help us, because then we had this sense of, yeah, we've seen absolutely the worst, and she's pulled through.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that. But with my grandma, she had a stroke, she's not going to be intubated, so it's easier to prepare someone for death. They did pull us to the side. They did say, hearing is the last thing that goes. It's going to be a little candle. Just make sure that you speak to her. And so we kind of lie. We're like, they ask me, they're like, just tell her that your mom also made it here and your brothers are here. So we're all lying. We're like, yeah, we're all here. Andy's doing great. Nico is great. Yolanda is so healthy. We're all here. Everything's awesome. You can go if you want. She's, of course, unconscious. She's not there. But towards the end, she was not going. She was not going. She was not going. Not that we were in a rush, but we were a little worried that she was still hesitant to go.
Yeah.
And so my aunt grabs her hand and says, my grandma is one of the most religious, not religious, one of the saintliest people I met. She would pray in silent meditation at least an hour and a half, which was not a lot of fun when you're having a sleepover, but now in retrospect, I admire it so much. And before bed, also, like, she would probably do like a whole rosary and speak to him. Like, her God and the Pope were like this. And so we tell her, oh, if you need to go, like, we're set here. Everything here is amazing. It's super taken care of. If you need to go, go. And she was still not going. So my aunt has a brilliant idea. And she's like, oh, plus, once you make it there, you know what's one of the coolest things? My dad, so I never met Mike, never, and he's supposed to be another like saintly superhero. And I never met him. By this time, he had been gone for maybe 25 years. So she has this brilliant idea and says, you know what's the coolest thing that you hadn't realized? I know it's kind of hard to leave us, but once you make it there, guess who's going to be there? Mike and Juan Pablo II. You're like your two favorite men in the universe, and your dad. Like, don't worry about this lame place. You're about to meet the coolest people ever. So she is unconscious. I don't know how. She pulls one of her hands and does one of her classic, like, Queen Elizabeth moves that is like kind of fixed, just like the little curve of the top of her hair, like preparing to see them. And I'll never forget that. That was so beautiful. And then she did pass. And so now they're gonna like dismantle her, like, you know, they have to like prep her and remove the tube and the thing and the thing and the thing. And so at that point, I'm still the cool Buddhist. So I'm like, death is just a state of being. I can handle this. So I was there. I saw her perfect, beautiful skin. I saw how they pulled the breathing tube that is a million miles long.
Yes.
Turn her over. They do the thing, the sip. And I'm like, I'm this enlightened, like, oh, this is just another state. Of course, it was hard. And I probably was in denial. But it was a very, very different experience. Also, I adore my grandma, but I think I wasn't as involved and emotionally entangled with it. So I think, but that I'll never, ever, ever, ever forget, because that is her move. It was this beautiful, like, post-40s, like, curved little thing to prepare to see Juan Pablo II, Jean Paul II. It's just so cute. I love that story so much.
Wow, that's really, it's and that's the thing. No, how do you choose to face death? It makes a difference in how you do your transcendence. No, definitely. I think for everybody, we all have a different adventure awaiting us for that moment when we have to cross that threshold. In the case of my mother, I think that she was very accepting, because, you know, and this has to do with the idea of the what I was telling you, the voodoo curse. Because my mother always said, I want to die just like my mother did. And my grandmother, her mother, died at 72 years old. She was relatively young. She died of a stroke, actually, in the same room where my mother died. They both died in the same room. Yeah. And she said always, I want to die like my mom. I want to die like my mom. So I think that she prophesied her own death. She chose to die that way. Like, she didn't get a stroke, but she got a brain tumor. So it's very similar. Even some of the things that happened when my grandmother was dying, because we were there as well. My dad had to go get some oxygen and for my mother, and to make her more comfortable. And something very similar happened with my grandmother when she was dying. But there was a difference. In this time, my dad was there in time, but with my grandmother, he came back too late with the oxygen. But there were many similarities. And I remember when we were at the hospital that last time, and she said, "Oh, but I said that I wanted to die like my mom, so now I am doing it." No, she could still talk at that moment. And I said, "Yes, mom, but your mother died when she was 72, you're 65." And she was like, "Didn't my mother die when she was 65?"
Wow.
And I was like, "No, mom, she died at 72." So she programmed how she wanted to die and she went with it. So I think in a way that was why it was also easier for her. She was like, "I want to die like my mother. I want to die young." Maybe that also had something to do with that. And the stories you're telling about how different your mother and your grandmother, how different the stories are. So what happened after your mother died? How did you live your grief in those few days after she had passed?
The few days after, I think I even joined a support group with my dad. My dad is very much not into any of this. And he was the one who said, he's like, should we try this? Because I don't think I'm mentally or emotionally prepared for this. And we did go to maybe two of the meetings. They're very much exactly what you think. I think they're even at the funeral house, like, no. But his romantic side kicked in, and so he wanted to cremate her and dispose of her ashes in the ocean. So, but also he wanted to hold on to her for a while. So we had that box full of ashes for a while. It took
I bet.
a while for him to say, should now we rent that boat? And we're all thinking, yeah, I think it's a good
Now
time.
it's time.
Go do that. Why don't we go ahead and
Yeah.
do that? And we did that, and he very romantically found in a little map of currents what's the part that is accessible to us, but where a lot of different, I don't know a lot about oceanography, but there's a spot close to Fort Lauderdale where in theory, like 4 oceans converge, like at least the currents underneath the thing, like it's a part that is kind of transited by all the possible currents, which I thought was such a beautiful romantic thing. Like she's gonna be in the water in the entire earth. It's so cool. And I thought my cool way to deal with it would be, so I thought, okay, if objects, seeing her life, how she lived her life, if objects can never, ever, ever replace a person, you know, because there's no, I mean, sure, I have
No
pictures,
way.
but nothing compares to having the person. I came up with this brilliant theory where for an exhibition, what I was going to do for an art exhibition, I wrote a proposal thinking they were going to say, like, things in the art world are not immediate. I thought, since I'm eager to process this, you know, I have this thing and I know I can only process it through art, because yeah, we've done the ocean thing, I've talked about it, and yeah, I've done the grieving, but I haven't opened the Pandora's box that is lose my mom. And so I thought, I'm going to write this proposal, which was brilliant. And I'm thinking, it's so cool that at least like 5 institutions are going to tell me, oh, she just died. How about we do this exhibition Friday? It doesn't work like that.
No.
It got approved and they said, yeah, but the exhibition is going to happen in like 9 or 10 months. And I'm thinking, so what? What am I supposed to do in the meantime?
In the meantime,
how am I going to process this? And so then the time comes and I have a very arrogant, I'm not labeling it, it's almost like humorous, because I thought, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. So I'm thinking, oh, how cool. Since items don't really represent a person, what are we going to do? Like now rent storage so that every time there's a hurricane, all the stuff we want to avoid, but we miss, but it still smells like we're going to go and like forever pay rental for like these things that we're never going to be willing to get rid of. So I thought, what if I fill an entire gallery space with all her belongings, everything. But my theory didn't come from a spiritual or conscious awareness. It came from pure arrogance. I wanted to show people how how misinformed she was. I still wanted to almost like judge her. I wanted to show how she was so disconnected from reality. She went into like a crazy shopping spree binge. She shopped a lot towards the end, but it wasn't for her. I mean, she bought cute little things for her, but by the time she was gone, cleaning supplies, there isn't one, there's 9. There's not only ash blonde, there's ash blonde, ash brunette blonde, blonde ash. There's all the options for everything, which I wanted to almost like put her in the spot and be like, you see what terrible people do, they consume instead of facing their fears. But it's because that arrogance and that ignorance was almost like my own trick, because if I was really gonna explore, if I really wrote a proposal saying I want to really address this pain that I'm not very aware I have because I probably shoved it somewhere.
Yeah.
I didn't have the wisdom to write that proposal. My proposal was about the consumerist tendencies when you're about to die. And so it gets approved because conceptually it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And so I have an argument with my brother because I said I wanted to actually bring everything. My brother was like, we're very, very different. And to him was not only disrespectful, but what is wrong with you? And why would you bring to a gallery? And why you're not taking my mom's stuff everywhere? Are you insane?
Yeah.
So we kind of got in an argument because then I'm the detached one because I'm so different. You guys don't get it. So I take most of the things that I'm allowed. I mean, the major things. I'm not going to bring her bed, but all her clothes, all her jewelry, all her paperwork, all the wallets, the hair dyes, the brushes, the projects, the knitting things, the unfinished rug, all of it. I brought it. And I bring in the bags. I think people around me were very aware of how intense this project is. I was in art mode. So to me, it was just materials. I'm bringing all these bags and they're not going to fit in this car. I'll do a second round. Oh, I can't believe they don't fit in here, because I'm still in denial. So I'm just treating it as an exhibition. And so I organize everything. For my partner at the time, he's kind of emptying the bags like, why are you doing this? This is insane. Like, for everyone was just excruciating. For me, was like, and I'm organizing everything. And so I start re-navigating her choices. So I'm organizing the hair dyes. So why the brand that is a little cheaper? Why so many of this? So she wanted to be blonder than brunette. So I'm starting to kind of navigate the millions of instances I saw her choose a nail polish. Why it wouldn't be red? Because bright red has a connotation that your dad doesn't like. And I'm replaying the millions of times, the little snippets of the 7 million times I saw her do her nails. I'm organizing the brushes, and I'm still, in the beginning, I'm still very arrogant. I'm thinking, who needs like all of these look the same? Don't you need just one round brush? I don't own a round brush. When I blow dry my hair, I use a comb because I'm so cool. Why would you need a tiny one and a 1 inch and a 1.5 inch and a 2 inch and a 2.5 inch and a flatter one? And I'm just judging her still. And as time progresses and things just like, now I'm in a room where like her clothes smell like her, and from reviving all these choices, by the time I put the last object on the thing, it's like I had invoked her. I mean, it wasn't like windows were flipping and papers were flying, but she was there.
Yeah.
And so the opening is tomorrow, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna curse, or you can, no, I'm not gonna curse. I'm thinking, I made a mistake. This whole exhibition was about how items can never, ever, ever replace, represent, or anything a person.
Yeah.
What have I done? Because she is here in every single choice, and I invoked her, I conjured her, and she was there. And so I realized, and this is why I make the kind of art I make. I make 2 kinds of art. I make something I called quiet art, which is when everything is fine and I'm just, I'm here. And so when I am here, I paint, and I paint in the middle of the house, and I want people to interrupt me and to see how I mix the colors. So it's quiet, very 2D, beautiful color theory, usually pictures that I recreate. And then there's the other kind of art, which is loud art. So like in this exhibition, it always bites me in the butt. It's like a cool recipe for disaster and success because it never fails. I make a plan. So for instance, in this example, I'm going to bring all the items. None of the items represent her. The place is going to have all the items displayed. When the exhibition ends, I'm going to give them away. And you're following protocol. So I'm thinking, what can fail? I'm going to bring an extension cord, make sure I bring the bags, make sure. So I'm planning everything for the piece that I'm creating. But it always, no matter how much I plan, because with time, these lists have gotten way more progressive. Like,
yeah, I can imagine.
I'm thinking this time you won't do it, mind, life, this time you won't teach me, this time I will think of everything. So the list becomes longer. I'm thinking of everything. I even have maps of where the outlets are in correlation of the thing, the directions, so that nothing can trick me. But it always happens. The piece always finds a way to kick me in the butt, teach me what I actually needed to learn. And so here I am in the middle of the gallery thinking everything was wrong. I actually invoked her. So now the application, my proposal, none of these things are valid. But this is exactly where I needed to be. Had I not created that whole environment, I would have stayed in my judgmental, anti-capitalist, or whatever bull beep I was telling myself, so that I wouldn't deal with what's actually happening. My mom, I failed at healing my mom. My mamita is now gone. My kid is not gonna have a grandma. Now the actual real issues flood up. The exhibition feels completely different, which is what made it a success. If the exhibition actually had become a, yeah, can you believe her? Who buys so many things? What kind of exhibition is that? That's disgusting. That's like,
Yeah.
So this is the way it needed to be. And when the exhibition ends, my idea was that everyone who came to the exhibition could take 1 or 2 objects from the show, so that instead of paying rental for a storage unit that we all, she's going to be everywhere, kind of like the ashes. So her clothes are going to be everywhere. Everybody who came to the show, now my mom is going to be in everybody's closet and everybody's everything. And it was very interesting because people who were very close to me, people who I loved, my friends, and I would ask them, like, who better than you to take something from my mom? Pick anything. The closer people were to me, the more they were like, this pen, I want to take this pen. And I would be like, you don't want like jewelry or clothes? And they were very careful and like, no, I want to take something safe. While strangers, one of them comes to me and says, I'm going to take this. And I look at it, it's the only letter that was left behind that my grandma had written to my mom with a picture and everything. And I'm looking at it and I look at him and I'm thinking, and I tell him, oh, this is great. I'm not sure if this one is available for you to take. What have I done? Do you want to pick anything else? And he looks at me and he says, isn't this the point of the piece? I'm like, I guess you're absolutely right. Go ahead. And he took
something very valuable in emotion. Yeah.
But he was absolutely right. I mean, sure, I could have that letter and show it to you right now, but that made it more, I don't know, it was very, very interesting and very, very challenging. And art always finds a way to bite me in the ass. So for that like giveaway last part, we did a Buddhist ceremony. It was very similar. It reminds me a lot of the way you described your mom's kind of final ritual in a way. So we played at Manzanero and everybody had champagne. It was like, we're going to party like it's whatever that song is. I wanted to have a bolero, tons of alcohol, tons of chocolate. Let's just celebrate and party the way she would party
Yeah.
to celebrate that passing.
Wow. I think this is very interesting because the big lesson is art is going to do with you whatever art wants to do with you. Like, I don't think that art is ever finished, but I think very few, like I was really fascinating when I was reading the materials you sent to me about this exhibition that you made to, it was to honor your mother, but it was also for you to grieve in a way that you didn't know you needed to grieve. And again, that part of you that wanted to psychologically protect you said, took the arrogant stand, but it had to be that way because in the end, and that's what happens when your loved one is dying, you become arrogant, like, no, I can heal them, no, I can change this, no, I can't. But then when you're faced, because you missed the moment when your mother took her last breath, I was there, so that there's a difference. But the moment for you, the equivalent to that is precisely that moment when you put that last piece of the exhibition and you realize, oh my God, I had it all wrong all this time. This is not what it is about. This is not about arrogance or saying, I'm going to be judging her. And I think we judge them like that because it happened with me and my mom as well. Like, you're just like, why are you doing this? How can you not be more illuminated? No, how can you not be, we want to even control that in death, no? And then you come to this realization that, wow, it was, I had it all wrong. But it's part of the process of grieving. It's part of living that. And then you're like on the other side, and then you realize, no, this is about love. And yes, these things and letting go of the things, just what happened to you, letting go, it was like, but don't take her. But that's the point of life. You have to let, like, if you love, you're gonna let go. There is no other way to live it. So, and to me, it resonates a lot. Like, we should be doing more with art and grief. Like what you did was wonderful in a way, like, okay, now let's make it a bigger experience. And I'm sure your mother was there in spirit, like, yes, this is how I wanted to say goodbye. This is how I wanted to live. And it's good that you're celebrating, even all those months later, it doesn't matter. And the power of objects, it's really strange because they cannot replace the person you love, but their energy is still there. And it happened to me with my mom, with her objects. The first thing we want to do, because what happened to you happened to me, in the sense of, no, let's pack everything, let's get it all away, like, she's gone, so let's just, like, I don't want to see these things, and you want to pack them and get rid of them like this. It's time to now move on, so let's pack it all up, no? So I think it's also part of the grieving process. And there is this Canadian singer, I'm trying to remember her name right now, John Arden. Her mother, she had Alzheimer's, and she was with her throughout this process until the mother died. And so my mother had these different plates that you put as decoration from different places, and her mother was like that as well. So what she did, it wasn't exactly like what you did, but she invited people over to the house and said, okay, take one of these, because she had many, take one of these and take a part of her, no? So I think in a way, in our psyches, it's like when we share something from that departed one, we're like letting them go, but also become a part of a greater history, because we did the same here. Like Anne and I took care of it. Like, okay, well, all of these things, and you start looking at just like, and that's why I was laughing, because my mother was the same. Like, instead of one of these objects, now she had like 10 of these, and you're like, what the am I supposed to do with this? Why didn't she use it? I was so angry when I was crying and angry, like, why didn't you use it when you were alive?
Yes.
Why so many of these things and you didn't use them? What is wrong with you? And I was so angry and crying. And it was so hard at the beginning. But I think that in a way, it's like uh, they want to leave us all of these. Like, when I'm gone, you're going to still have this stuff, and you will think of me, and you will know that I'm here. And the lesson is as well, I think, very important. Live your life every day as if it's a special day. Don't wait for a special day to get out the good perfume or get out the whatever, no, the fine china. That's what I learned from looking at these subjects. And like, why didn't you use them? So now I bring out the big tablecloths and many, many interesting things. Sorry, look, my throat is even like acting up right now talking about this, because life is here now. Don't wait to make it special. I don't know if that happened to you as well when finally you ended this, and what is the big lesson behind why didn't she use these things? Did that happen to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think my first instance of that was with my grandma, the one that I just told you, Grandma Tita, my dad's mom, because she was not a hoarder, but she definitely waited for a better day to use her finest things. So she was not an over purchaser. She was very careful with her money because when her husband died, she was not gonna go back to the workforce, but his pension, which I'm sure it's moderate or was moderate, with that little bit of money, she wanted to have plenty to do the everyday things, to never depend on her children. And so she would save a lot, which of course, when you're a kid, is a little infuriating. Like, why aren't you blowing every penny that you get on me? But she was incredibly careful with money. But when she bought something, it was something valuable. She doesn't shop like me. I love a deal. So if you show me like bike shorts and these shorts and now they're only $6 and I don't love the colors, but they're only $6, I probably will get 3 colors. She would buy the pair that she adores that is probably like $89, and I would be like, who blows all this money on this? But it also would last her 17 years and still fit her perfectly, and it's still her favorite. But when she passed, her closet was like a micro Burdines or like a mini Macy's, because there were shirts that were still packed, like these precious things that she must have bought in a million trips. My aunt was very much like, this is not my style, and there's just too much of everything, and also I'm never gonna wear this. Also, some of these are new, and she donated 99.9% of my grandma's stuff. So it was the first instance where I got to think, and my dad is a lot like that. My dad to this point has like Mark and Spencer shirts that he bought probably in a work trip in 1994, and it's too fancy to wear them, but now they don't fit you, and some of them are like a little yellow from like time in a plastic bag. So I've had like a constant reminder. I still am not the person who wears my favorite everything all the time. I've gotten a lot better, especially with art. I buy the highest quality pigment of the everything, but I'm very third world. Then I get the cheaper one and I use that one so that I see the super fancy one. So I've started to integrate more of these, like using and not preparing so much for the future. But in her case, I switched that judgment. I think she was leaving things ready for us in a way, not in a someday you'll need this, but as a fun fact, when the pandemic started, and you know how in the beginning you couldn't even buy a mask because all of a sudden they were all gone from all the internet. All of a sudden, we've never the internet has never seen a mask. They were impossible to buy, and we're freaking out because we needed to go. This is in the beginning when we thought there were like bodies in the windows. So we needed a mask to go do errands, to go to the doctor. And I'm going through something in the kitchen and I find a box from that she must have bought. I don't even know why she would have bought masks in what, 2005, 6, 4, 3. It was a box of the masks that we all needed. And I was very proud. I'm like, oh, we all get one mask that my mom prepared for us. Of course, she didn't know there was going to be a pandemic in a few years. But I think it wasn't so much that she was trying to feel that emptiness with Walmart products. I think a lot of it was, in case I'm not here when they're going to have a birthday and they're going to need disposable plates, I'm going to buy 500.
Exactly.
So that for all the birthdays that they're going to have, they have plastic. So to this day, there are many things that she took care of years ago that we now get to enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, my mother, the same. I did get rid of a lot, but many things are like, we're still using them, no, unpacking them. I'm like, oh my God, why didn't you use this? No, like it's been how many years? 4 years since she passed away, and we're barely beginning to end some of the stuff, like some soap, for example, things like that. I'm like, she was crazy, no? But
Mhm,
think like it was good in a way for us to say, okay, we still have a bit of her with us, no?
mhm, mhm.
But it gives you an important lesson, no? Enjoy everything, use everything. Today's a special day. Don't put like for special. That's another thing that I learned through her passing, and the aftermath, no, like, okay, dealing with whatever was left in these objects that still have an energetic resonance with her. And
Mhm.
it's interesting, no, how to say you have to let go of this because this is not this is not me, no, or maybe this is very valuable, but somebody else in the family wants it, and I have to say, okay, take it, no.
Yes.
So just to finish our interview today, this amazing conversation that I'm so happy to have with you, my dear Kat, what would you tell people who are going through this process of letting go of a loved one, and how to cope or how to live better their grieving process once this person is gone? What would you tell people based in your experience?
I would say maybe definitely not wait until they're sick. I think for your own treat, without of course like spending the money you don't have or anything like that, but for the most part, treat every single day like today is the day. When you were a kid and you would bring a permit slip because it's like your friend's birthday and you get to go on their bus and then you're gonna be at the birthday party from the beginning. A little bit like treat as much as you can, as many days as you can, like that. um don't wear fake perfume, don't wear cheap perfume, don't wear fake shoes. Have the thing, and it doesn't need to be name brand, but give yourself that care, give yourself that, treat yourself like like you're the special guest at something, the way you would prepare, the way you would love and give to someone. Have like little pockets of giving that to you,
Mm,
because I think it will create a warm space,
yeah,
very similar emotionally to how if we're having a crazy situation in an airplane and my baby's with me, I will have to put on my mask to fully be there for him.
exactly.
I think with my mom, I didn't have my mask on. I wasn't sure if we were sharing masks or if we could.
Yeah,
So I think the more you cultivate this space with you and this time with you, the better. And not so much from my experience, but from hearing you, definitely have those difficult conversations, which I'm trying to even do with my son and my dad. Like, why don't we do it as an outing and make our wills? Like, of
yeah,
course, I'm not planning for it, but if we treat it like going to Target to see what they have for towels, like, do you want to work on our wheels? Like, the more fun you make, or like the more you trick yourself into preparing or starting, you may change your mind, but at least there's a plan. Don't let it catch you off guard. Don't let it.
exactly.
And I'm not saying go purchase insurance for everyone just in case everyone dies, because I'm also not suggesting we come out of fear. Quite the opposite.
Yeah,
Like, just
exactly.
every single day try to do, and it's an everyday thing. It's having faith on you, and it's an I preach and it sounds very beautiful here, and I don't know if I'm put tomorrow in the same situation or with my kid, I don't know how much I'd be like, yeah, super cool, just writing this DNR for my son.
Mhm.
But as a wishful thinking, perhaps, the more you're prepared with your spiritual little airplane masks, the more
Mhm.
you treat yourself to little presents, just love you enough so that then you feel like it's worth hearing your point of view, having that conversation. It's
Yeah,
going to become easier to tell someone, you know what, I'm a little scared, or you know what, I'm a little worried that if this happens, or this is very difficult to say, but I'm in a good place. I just want to know how you feel about A, B, or C, or should that happen? What do you prefer? That, like, have
exactly.
those pretty conversations when it's easy, so that it saves you anxiety,
Yeah.
fear. panic and anxiety, being anxious over your imaginary responsibility over things that are just not in your hands.
Yeah, or even denial, because once you're there living it, you're going to be in denial and you're not going to think clearly. And these things are important to know and to deal with beforehand. Yes, I totally agree with you. And what about like for people who are dealing with grief, what would you tell them?
Oh, grief is a difficult one. I mean, and not even only death related. I think everything related. I think even for me, who claim to be so spiritually progressive, and it's gonna sound a little bit like a Sulkin commercial, but because we get a chance every 20 years, what? Every 20 days, or even if we're looking, we're not going to get into it completely, but even if we're looking at an oracle, the world bridger will be there in some kind of position. I think if you find fun or conceptual or creative ways to see death as just a different state, just like an ice cube is not looking at oxygen and saying, if only I was a gas instead of a solid, and the water is not hoping that they could just like levitate or like be 3D like a cube. They all in their own different states are water. I think the more you can practice small, maybe grieve the small things, grieve the pound that you didn't lose, grieve the summer that now seems too far, grieve the winter that was so cold and now there's so much sun. Like, practice grieving little things and appreciating their change of state, so that when the super challenging level 25 grieving things come to you, you remember. It's not that you're going to say, oh yeah, 2 days ago was see me 4, so they can die. But if you feel more comfortable with the death of things and situations, I think you'll protect yourself when shit hits the fan.
Yeah, it's a good idea to start getting like used to it in small doses in a way, so that when the big ones come, then it's not going to be so hard for you to navigate through them because you know what it's about. Definitely. I would add also, just like if your loved one is dying, just be there lovingly. Even if you're scared, just be there. And it's a very sacred moment that not everybody gets to live. So if you have the opportunity to just be there, you don't have to say anything. Just hold their hand and let them know that you love them. It's going to be hard for you to face it, but it's worth it, because then many people after it happens and they don't do that, they're like, what if, no? What did I miss? Why didn't I do it?
Of course, you'll shop that. Yesterday, very quickly, because I know we gotta go, but yesterday I was watching a documentary by Michael Pollan on different psychoactive substances. And so they were talking about mushrooms, and everybody they interviewed is like 70, 60, 80. And this woman had such a beautiful way to talk about the experience she had, because she had terminal cancer, and seeing death from like having a psychoactive experience of actually dying allowed her to not be less afraid. The way she said it, I'm not going to paraphrase it, but she was so eloquent. She's like, of course I'm still depressed, and of course there are days that just kick my butt. But having crossed that threshold allowed me to almost like reverse and deal with that fear differently. I think we're so terrified of losing someone, of death, of even our own death. And maybe, like you're saying, be there. But they were saying, my point was, with these psychoactive drugs, of course they're not legal, but they were questioning that. They were saying, how is it that it's perfectly normal, legal, medically suggested to give you some pill, maybe not so much for cancer, but in the case of, for instance, PTSD, sure, you go to the hospital and the official medicine, but maybe you'll take 2 pills. And this guy was describing, and he's like, yeah, the pills worked in the sense that I felt like I was walking with like a buffer, like pillows all over me, kind of like not feeling life. But the moment you have an actual psychoactive experience, that thing you've been shoving somewhere in your mind, or you like smoke it away or drink coffee away or research away so that it's not there, because you feel you're not good enough because you're still thinking of it. So you just say, oh, if I'm not thinking of it, then it's going to move back somewhere, and you shove it and you shove it and you shove it.
Yeah.
And these experiences that just make you open up. And so, of course, the examples they were giving are awful. Somebody who's been just avoiding the memory of their mom being attacked and then murdered, like just awful things that they've been repressing.
Yeah.
And you create such a mess trying to still keep that down. Like if you're in a pool and you sit on one of those balls that floats, and like a balloon, and then somebody says, Aida, get another one, and you're like, oh, I can do it. Oh, I can do 3. Oh, I can do 4. Oh my God, I have like 5. But at some point you're just like, and they will float. So don't take the thing that is just gonna like make you think it's not there. Like you're saying, maybe going and holding their hand is terrifying, but I promise it's so worth it. It's an investment. Of course, don't do anything you don't feel like, but if you challenge yourself to open a little bit of the places that you have shoved inside, you're going to save yourself so much time, even money, and you're just going to be able to be here, which is what actually we need, to be present with all your senses here, feeling that, yeah, you made mistakes. Yeah, you made weird choices. Yeah, there's memories that are awful, but if we go and investigate those places and we look at the things we left behind when someone dies for our own life, I think the more heartache we're gonna save ourselves. It seems like doing those scary things is gonna be traumatic
or very hurtful, even.
Yeah, of course, because they are. But you're saving. It's like you're putting a down payment, and now you're not gonna have a 40-year mortgage. You're just buying cash.
Exactly. Then you face it, you leave it, and it's gonna make it easier, even though it hurts so much because it's hard. But I can tell you, at least from my experience with my mother, yes, it was like an impossible moment, no, to say, you know what, God or creator or whatever you want to call it, here she is. I have no control over this. I just surrender to the moment and I choose love. And that's what makes a difference, definitely.
And the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, Kat, what an amazing conversation. I think this is very worthy. And there's so much still to be said about death, dying, and grief and art, definitely. But it's time to go. But before that, tell us, how can people reach you? How can people know more about your art if they want to support you or help you in your art? What are your social media accounts? Where can we reach you, please?
That's beautiful. I am at the Catalina everywhere. On Gmail, if you want to tell me some cool secret story, on Instagram, and that will link you so that maybe we can put it somewhere.
Yes, I will put it here, definitely.
Your website, but there's way to reach me. I would love if you have not even support, if any question, any cool thing. I love to hear from all of you.
And also to know your art and what you've done throughout the years. It's very important as an artist to see how not only this, but many other experiences you've had, how they inform what you create, and also encourage us to create. Because when I was looking at what you were doing, I'm like, we can all be artists, and we deny that to ourselves. So you're a great example of how we can do that. So thank you so much, Kat, for this amazing conversation. What a beautiful conversation. And I hope that a lot of people can benefit from this. And I definitely want to have you back as a guest. So very soon, surely we can talk about other important things. Definitely.
I can talk to you every day of my life. I love
this is a lot of fun.
Whenever you want to talk about anything, I love you.
I love you too, my dear Kat. So thank you, Synchronauts. And you know how to reach Kat if you have any questions or ideas or whatever you want to share with her, and you know how to reach us as well. So thank you and see you very soon. Bye.